Today I'm going to show you a figure drawing that I'm going to do, and it's going to be around an hour with about a 15-minute setup or layout to get the gesture of it down. Usually gesture drawings are 30 seconds to a minute, but I spent a little bit longer knowing that I was going to render this out. So this lay-in, I'm going to do it smaller, and it's going to be about 5 minutes, and then I'll show you the process of start to finish of doing a full rendering. Now, this isn't a hyper-realistic rendering. It is going to be stylized using some different charcoal mediums of Conte and some soft pastels, alpha color, and I'm gonna do it in kind of a painterly way. I got criticized a little bit when I was doing figure drawing for doing things more like an illustrator or a painter, I guess, instead of doing things more line work intensive. I've been doing figure drawing for a long time, since high school, actually. I was doing figure drawings in high school, and I actually got in trouble for it because there was nudity in the figure. And my art teacher, she was sweet, but she was trying to fight on my behalf because they were trying to censor me. But I've always loved doing figure drawing. And I did it all through college, and I kept doing it after college, and I still do it today. And it's been like 20 years, and I still enjoy doing it. So I kind of want to just show you the process of how I do it. I've adopted some new techniques recently that I'm trying out that approach it a lot more painterly than I usually do it. Typically, I would use a 2B Conte pencil and pretty much just that, and render the whole thing in 2B Conte pencil. But recently, I've been using these alpha color soft pastels, and using Conte to just lay it in HB, which is a harder charcoal. And then rendering it and using, like, what are they called? These things? These like paper sticks? Blending stick. These blending sticks. and then just using a chamois you can see the dark spot where I just use the dark spot and rub it in along with my fingers and making a mess and everything like that. And then I also use a kneaded eraser. Oh, that doesn't want to focus. Well, everyone knows what a kneaded eraser is, right? It's like silly putty, but it erases. And the thing I like about this is you can make like a really, really like fine point to it. And you could also like erase out big parts by just widening it. It's really nice. So that's what I use to erase. And then this is the Conte pencil right here. HB, I usually like the softer ones, but I don't have any, so I'm using this really hard one, HB. I'll usually use 3B or maybe 2B. They get softer and softer the higher the number. So 3B is really soft. You have to be very delicate when you're sharpening it. And then this is a Conte Aperi 2B, just a pastel. There we go. Yeah, it actually says it on there. It's etched in which is convenient because I don't even remember when I put this in my little toolbox or my little drawing box. This is literally the same drawing box I've used for probably 20 years. And I sharpen it with an oops, oh God, that's gonna leave a mess. This is like a very high grit sandpaper, and you can sharpen your pencils with that. God, it's making such a mess. Anyway, so the ones that I'm using today are that one, and then this General's charcoal stick, 2B. And I'm using a soft pastel that doesn't have an engraving on it, so I don't have to worry about the camera focusing. But I can show you the box, and it is this alpha color, soft pastel. So those are the materials that I'm using for this drawing. Laying it in with the HB Conte of Paris pencil, which I'm very familiar with. I used a lot through the years. Sharpened to kind of a long point. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, perfect. Usually I would make it more of a taper coming up on the sides, but this works. I mean, it's just for the layout, and I'm not going to be rendering with this, so it's not a big deal. And then the sticks come in really useful for laying in big chunks of value and then just blending them with either the chamois or the side of my thumb or a finger or something like that, and kind of painting with the charcoal and pulling it out with the kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser can only do so much, so it's good not to go overboard with it. If you know there's a very light area, you don't want to blend too much of the shadow in there and try to pull it out later, because like I said, it can only do so much. It's not like an oil paint where you can just literally go over it after it's dried and just put white or whatever. So yeah, keeping that in mind. And yeah, this is a way I like to work now, in a more rendered, painterly way. I still like doing it just with the Conte of Paris pencil, but I like trying new things too. So this is fun. I like it. It's very messy, but it's very painterly, and you can play with edges a lot. It's a lot of fun. So let's get started. Okay, so this is the lay-in, and I did it in about 5 minutes. Sorry, it's a little cropped at the top, but the final one won't be. So I'm just getting the relation between the shapes, finding the lines that connect the major shapes, the positive shapes, and getting the spine where the butt hits the ground in the leg. Just trying to get the overall big shape. And then here I'm cutting in, getting the cross contour on the leg, looking at the negative shapes there, and then how the lines relate to each other. As you can see, this is just kind of getting the big lines, not too much of the detail right at this point. There, the torso overlaps. I should have gotten the other hand in earlier, but sometimes I get kind of caught up in the more refined shapes. But here I get the back hand and arm, and I was relating it to the front hand and arm and trying to find a line that connects them to get the perspective of the floor plane. So that was the lay-in. That was enough to get an idea. And so now I'm starting on the final. It's kind of faint right now, but it'll get darker. I always start with the head, just a circle to put it down in placement, and then the box of the front of the face, where the jawline to the front of the face go. And very much the same process as the lay-in, just getting the overall gesture lines and the relations of the parts. You can see it kind of faintly, the line off the shoulder that connects with the leg or the knee, and try to find those big relationships. Yeah, sometimes, I still kind of get carried away with like refining as I'm going, which is not necessary. I mean, I should be getting the whole thing in, but right there, I'm looking at the negative space. Getting the side, the legs, how they relate to each other, the one on the ground versus the bent one. The elbow, that little crease on the elbow, and the inside of the knee are really good landmarks that you can use to measure distances. So that's why I'm putting those in. It helps give me an idea of how long each part needs to be. The same with the shoulder blade back there and some of these other little shapes that I'm putting in. I'm basically putting those in now to give me landmarks. Here's the main, like if you were to take the butt down to the foot and draw a straight line, it allows you to see the negative space, the negative shapes to that straight line, that imaginary line, and you can get a more accurate layout that way. So this is the same as the last process exactly, with a little bit more refining. And I'm being a little more exact with the proportions and the shapes, because I know I'm going to be rendering it out. Okay, so yeah, that's good for the layout, most of the layout. So now I'm gonna work on the face a little bit. Making some adjustments. I like to get the face in fairly early to make sure if the head's in proportion, then I can eyeball the rest of the proportions. I used to measure them out, but now I can kind of eyeball it and get a good sense of everything else. Plus, I just like doing faces. Nothing too detailed, just enough of the major parts. Refining some of the shapes there. So now I've switched over to the Conte stick to start to block in my values, since the lay-in is good enough to start rendering the forms now, I think. little bit of back and forth of blending and erasing to make the forms turn. Trying to find the dark areas and get those in. I'm not super familiar with the sticks yet, so that's why I'm trying to find like a sharp edge to make a fine mark. There's a lot of overlapping forms with the breast and the leg and the torso, so I want to make sure that those are reading one in front of the other. Detailing the forms out here, blending them. Trying to get the box of the elbow there, the corner. Here I'm using the blending stick, cleaning up a little bit. There's a nice contrast with the pelvis with the forearm. I'm thinking mostly about just the overall big shape, the big tube of the leg, and not the individual muscles at this point. Just chiseling away the shapes here from one line to break it up into 4 lines and subdividing it, kind of. If you think if you think of it as a 3D modeler, you're subdividing the geometry, or a sculptor chiseling away, refining. Here I'm using the blending stick to get the big forms of the head. It's a little too dark, so I'm lightening it with the eraser. And then darkening the areas to make them pop. Getting in the mass of the hair here. This chamois is really helpful to get large areas. And it's easier to blend too because it doesn't, the oils of your hands aren't taking away the charcoal. It's one of the darker areas of the reference. Trying to mask all the back so the front has the most contrast, and then in the back it fades away. It gives it more depth. Focusing on the negative shape right here in between the legs, and then losing some of the edge on the calf. Well, all the edges here, but I'll come back and refine them. It's starting to get darker with the alpha color. Just incorporating the background into the form so that she's actually in an environment, in space, and not just a flat drawing. Lightening some areas on the face. Don't want it to be too defined. Adding the darks will help that as well. Losing an edge right on the calf there. Helps it to blend into the background more. So I'm putting pigment down on the leg knowing that I'm going to blend it, so if it looks like a big black mark, I know that it's going to get lighter once I blend it in with the chamois, and then I can pull out the light values with the eraser. Getting the details of the fingers in. I always do the overall shape of the hand first, and then I break it down into the fingers. And I can get more precision with the pencil, so I switch over to the pencil because I don't want to mess this part up. People pay attention to the hands and the face. Refining the foot shape and the ankle. Some of the negative space behind the model. Coming back in with some of these connecting areas for the muscles. And then blending the rest away. Now I can work a little bit on the back area. And making sure to subordinate it to the foreground. In this case, I mean, it's not very far in the foreground, but the silhouette, like refining the silhouette here. And then just smudging away the background. Just like a painting. I'm making sure the face doesn't get too smudgy. going back and forth on this arm because it's the closest to us, so it's has a bit more importance in rendering. And here I'm just getting the major shapes of the foot. I'm not going to render the foot. It's not as important. Now I can work on the form of the torso some more. The spine. Just important landmarks. Some of the major, or some of the minor muscle groups here too. I can use the chamois. It's nice to land big values and keep the white of the paper for just highlights. Everything else can get smudged away. That back arm can just totally go back. It can totally be smudged away. It's in the background. It gives it more depth to make it a little softer back there. Pulling out some highlights with the eraser. Softening some of the edges in the back on the bottom leg there. Just back and forth with the values. So now I'm working on the silhouette of the head and paying attention to that shape. Because that's going to be very important. This is a focal point. This is a focal point here. Looking at my lay-in there really quickly to see how I had the shapes. So you can make an edge without drawing it by just drawing what's behind it or putting in value behind it. I really want these forms to read one in front of the other. So I'm paying attention to all the contrasts there, maybe emphasizing it a little bit more. See, I didn't even put the whole line there because I wanted to lose some edges here and there. And I can do that with the chamois as well. More rendering of the back. I'm putting the rest of the spine in there. Trying to get the corner of the box there to make the form really read as three-dimensional. You can see the pattern light, dark, light, dark. And just smudging back the arm, darkening the value. Trying to blow it away, it didn't really work. Pulling some lights, lightening it up again. Some of the areas, the planes of the face that are hitting the light or facing the light. Refining some of the small details of the eye and eyebrow and nose and lips. This is an important part of the drawing, the face. Everyone always looks at a face. Your attention is drawn towards faces. It's just a human reaction. Putting a dark value on near the hair on the neck so it reads as a tube. Making sure her right leg reads as going in front of the left leg, which is going back. So I make sure that overlap is very clear here, even if the other edge is lost. Trying to show how the forms overlap each other in this area. Refining a little bit of the forms of the foot. The cast shadow to indicate the ground plane. Make that darker. I do still want to show some form in the arm back there, so I will render it a little bit so it's not completely flat. It would have been fine to leave it completely flat though. I'm just pushing the rest of the neck back so the face pops forward. Same with doing the edge there so it comes forward. Adding more volume to the form back there. Refining the hand, another important area. Yeah, I'm still not happy with how the forms of the foot are appearing, so I need to add a little more detail there. Just softening edges with the chamois here. I don't want areas where I don't want hard edges. Pulling back some of the hard edge here where it's important. Some details of hair, strands, and things like that. Making sure that ground plane is reading by darkening the cast shadow. Rendering some of the form of the back arm a little bit. Okay, so that's all I did with this one. I wanted to stick pretty close to around an hour, so I didn't want to keep going too much on this, and I felt like the idea was there. So I hope you learned something from this, and I hope to do more of these art process videos in the future. And thanks for watching.